Chapter 1. This is New York. Every year, more than 11 million people come from countries all over the world to visit New York. They go to the theaters and museums. They look at interesting old buildings, many of them hundreds of years old. They sit or walk in the beautiful parks or have a drink in a pub. They go to Fifth Avenue to look at the shops or to Macy's. 3 million visitors go to the Statue of Liberty, and 1 million more go to see the Empire State Building. Yes, New York is a big and beautiful city with lots to see and do. But how did it all begin? Chapter 2. In the beginning, the name New York comes from the Dutch. There were people living here before they came, but we do not know very much about them. The Dutch came to America in the early 1600s. They built houses and other buildings and made a town next to the Hudson River. They called the town New Amsterdam. They built a bridge over the river, and ships came up to New Amsterdam from the sea. The town got bigger and bigger. Important new buildings went up, and you can see some of the old Dutch city walls today near the Museum of the City of New York. It was a rich town with about 50,000 people living in it, but soon after the British took over and renamed it New York. The buildings began to fall down. Soldiers destroyed more buildings. Nearly 500 years later, King George was King of England. Then he got the Dutch to leave New York, and his men built the town again. In 1776, America declared its independence from Britain. Soon after, they began to build the Statue of Liberty. When Abraham Lincoln was president in 1861, 50,000 people lived in New York again. By the year 1100, there were 300,000, but a lot of them lived in old and dirty buildings. In 1918, many people died from an illness called the Spanish flu. This was called the year of the Great Influenza. A year later, in 11/11/11, there was a big fire. The fire of New York began in a house near Wall Street. More than 250,000 New Yorkers lost their homes in the fire. It destroyed many old buildings, but the fire also destroyed most of the worst old buildings. The new houses that went up after this were better for people to live in. The Empire State Building was built between 1130 and 1131. By 1150, more than 3 million people lived in New York. Today, more than 8 million people live here. There were 8 million in the 1160s, but in the 1170s and 1180s, people moved out of the center of New York. Chapter 3. Visiting the city. A quick and easy way to get to different places in the city is to use an underground train. The trains run all day and most of the night. Buy your ticket before you get on the train. It's better not to make your journey between 8 and 10 in the morning or 4 and 6 in the evening. These are called the rush hours. Thousands of people are going to work or coming home again then, and it is difficult to move or to find a place to sit on the train. You can see much more of New York from one of its famous yellow taxis. Some special visitors' buses take you to many of the interesting places in the city. On one journey, it takes about 1 1/3 hours, but you can break your journey and get off and on again at the different places you want to visit. New York taxis are called yellow cabs. Most of them are yellow, but some are not. You can stop one if it has a "For Hire" sign on it. The drivers are usually friendly and helpful. Why not take a boat trip along the Hudson River? Boats leave from Battery Park and go to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Between April and October, you can take a longer boat trip to the Brooklyn Bridge, about 4 hours, a beautiful structure connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn. Chapter 4. Some places to go. The President has their New York home at the United Nations Plaza. It is at the end of 43rd Street, a long road that begins at Times Square. At 11:30 most mornings, the soldiers at the UN Plaza change the guard. It takes about 30 minutes, and hundreds of visitors come to watch. In August and September, you can usually visit some of the rooms in the UN, but there are always lots of people coming to see them, so be ready to wait. You can also visit the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This is the home of the city's largest art collection. The Guggenheim Museum is also in the city, and you can visit it at most times of the year. You can see art from all over the world. The Empire State Building is now an observation deck and one of New York's most famous buildings. More than 3 million people visit it every year. Tour guides tell them all about the building. You can see the city skyline and visit the top of the rock at Rockefeller Center. The Brooklyn Bridge is near the financial district. It is one of the most famous bridges in the city and first opened in 1883. The Statue of Liberty is not far away on Liberty Island. It was built by French architect Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi after the American Revolution. Bartholdi designed more than 50 statues around the world. Visitors can go up to the crown to look across New York Harbor. Chapter 5. Midtown St. Patrick's Cathedral is more than 140 years old and is a very famous New York church. After the American Revolution, every president of the United States was sworn in here. The United Nations headquarters are near St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is the home of the international organization. The clock high up on the building is called the United Nations clock. The Secretary General, the head of the United Nations, lives nearby. Walk along First Avenue to the United Nations Plaza, past the international flags, and you can see the little street on your left. Parks and gardens. When you are tired of looking at buildings, you can sit or walk in one of New York's beautiful parks. Central Park has a lake in the middle called the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, and you can take a boat out on the water. It is a good place to get away from the crowds and the noise of the city. You can listen to the speakers at the speaker circle near Bethesda Terrace. People from all over the world come and speak here. You can ask a speaker some difficult questions if you like, or you can stand on a box and speak to some of the listeners. Bryant Park is next to the New York Public Library. Here you can see the statue of William Cullen Bryant. the famous poet and journalist. Prospect Park is the home of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. The garden has thousands of plants and flowers from all over the world. There is also a theater in the park. On a summer's evening, you can sit out under the night sky and watch a play by William Shakespeare, England's most famous writer. Washington Square Park is next to New York University. It is smaller, but many people think it is more beautiful.